Good morning. The sun is up. I checked. Bitcoin's running. We're good. Drink a coffee. Ready to talk about the news. So I woke up this morning and one of the first trending stories, of course, was DEFCON 3. DEFCON 3. Now, you know, on this show, we've been giving Kanye West his Bitcoin policy. We've drafted it. It's a 5-point plan. The first item on our 5-point plan is that Kanye and Bitcoin Magazine produces a show on Jekyll Island, where the US Federal Reserve, otherwise known as the Bank Trust, was created. And there's a bit of occult stuff that went on that island, and we want to exorcise those demons and sanctify it with a real Bitcoin show. And Kanye is going to be our keynote. So when I saw DEFCON 3, and then I saw that Kanye had said a bunch of stuff, right? I realized right away that we had one of the names, potential names for the show. If anyone can get attention, if anyone knows how to get attention, it's Kanye West. He's probably the best in the world. If anyone noticed yesterday just how smart he is at getting attention, remember he wore the 2023 hat for the Tucker Carlson interview. And you know, your mind obviously thinks it's a year, it's not an election year, what's he doing with the hat? The first tweet back when he rejoined Twitter 2 days ago was a 2024 hat. So I'm going to get a 2024 hat, I'm going to get a Black Lives Matter t-shirt, I'm going to wear the Black Lives Matter t-shirt and the 2024 hat, and we're going to be ready to go. That's a great campaign outfit for the next election, I think. Maybe put a Bitcoin, somewhere on it. A Bitcoin symbol. So Kanye, DEFCON, I think a great name to talk about what happened, the robber baron event that occurred at Jekyll Island when they created the Federal Reserve, the US Bank Trust. And if we're going to get the right mix of an event, and we're going to get some of that good energy and get away all the bad stuff, then it's going to be a great show. So in other news, Lauren Boebert, she is a congresswoman, I think from Colorado. I don't know a lot about her. My understanding is she worked at a restaurant out west where all the waitresses carry firearms, which is fine. I would like to go to that restaurant. And so she's also very clever and has a lot of funny jokes. And she pulled one of the best pranks I've ever seen on Twitter ever yesterday. Really clever stuff. Bitcoiners should take note here. So, and this has a lot to do with how it worked because of how the media works and operates. And we're going to get to that in a second. So she tweeted yesterday, "I have 2 words for you. Let's go, Brandon." So everyone knows what "let's go, Brandon" means, right? So she said, "I have 2 words for you. Let's go, Brandon." And of course, her replies filled up with everyone in the world. "You idiot. You're so dumb. That's 3 words. You've got David Hogg. You've got all kinds of folks here. George Takei, all your usual suspects. Well, the reason she did it is because US President Biden had given a speech the day before where he said the same thing. "I have 2 words, made in America." So of course, every Republican NPC, that's 2 words. And it was kind of like a semi-viral, everyone kind of laughing at the old fella. I don't really find that stuff that funny because we know he's old and it's sad more than it is funny. It used to be a little bit funny. I don't find it funny anymore. It's sad. So, but I don't want to, we're not going to get down on how this guy's getting treated. I don't feel bad for him, right? Like I'm not that caught up in how Biden is being treated. But anyway, I'm just saying I didn't gang in. No one, not a lot of people piled on and said that's 3 words. But the way Lauren Boebert did it was brilliant. Because the thing is, and we talk about that a lot on this show, the fake prison of 2 ideas, and it's really a series of echo chambers, basically, right? And it's very hard to get information to pass between the 2 solitudes, between left and right, blue and red. usually the information just ricochets and echoes around in one room, and there's very little penetration to the other room. You have to be clever in order to do that. It doesn't happen every day. It almost never happens, in fact. The low awareness and low information folks on either side, it's not equal. I'd say most Republicans and right-wing people have a little bit wider view simply because they have more alternative media. They're not being completely surrounded on all sides by multiple choices of left-wing liberal media. There's really Fox, and if you don't do Fox, then you're into the startup world of media, you're into the Daily Wire stuff, you're into YouTube. Now, tons of dopamine dealers there too, tons of people who want outrage, engagement, and all those kinds of things. So they can keep you in your box. You know, I say it a lot, I love Daily Wire, but I try not to watch it regularly simply because it pumps your head too full of logical talking points and you end up repeating them without even realizing that you didn't even agree with them. So it's very difficult. Daily Wire is so good and so effective that it's hard to keep your own opinion when you watch it because it's so persuasive. So I endorse the program. I endorse the creators. I think the God King, Jeremy Boring, it's what he calls himself, the God King, is one of the smartest media people in the world. If you saw his advertisement for Jeremy's Racers, you can tell right away he's operating on another level. But I try to avoid it just because of those talking points. So what happens here is Lauren, when she goes and does this thing, she actually gets the story to bounce around within left-wing media. They might not ever know what's happened to them, but instead of arguing, right, and I think Bitcoiners have a lot to learn from this. Instead of arguing, you're not seeing it right, sometimes you have to flip the script. And that's what she did here. So instead of saying, why can't Biden know the difference between 2 and 3 words? And then trying to explain to people why they didn't understand he was stupid and all those other things. Not nearly as effective as this prank. Not nearly as effective as this prank. By doing the same thing and forcing other people to explain the joke to her, while not condemning or laughing at Biden, basically makes the joke on them, which is super clever, right? She's pay attention to her type of thing. So speaking of propaganda, though, speaking of these molds that make you think one way or another way, and breaking out of it, this is one that I saw in Russia. So there's a series of commercials that they make for immigrants, people leaving Russia. Now, I think everyone should emigrate from Russia at the moment. I don't think things are good there. And if you can get out, right? I've been to Russia. I don't like it in good times. It's not a great place. So according, that's how I feel. Some people might like it. I met a lot of great people there, but when it was time to go, I was pretty happy to leave. And I left on a train and got woken up near the Finnish border with the folks in the machine guns and everything, saying, "Where's your passport?" And they were going to sell it back to you. I had taken a bunch of photocopies of my passport, so I was able to just give it to them, and they didn't have to look at the original document. But that's what they're doing. Imagine waking people up at 2 a.m, taking a train from Moscow to Helsinki, and it crosses the border overnight. And they were sitting there kicking our chairs and beds and waking us up, and trying to run some kind of scam on us. So happy to leave the country when I left it, but here's the ad. So they have immigrants moving to America on an airplane, and the Russians are confused about the world that they're meeting on this airplane. So first they meet a woman who they think is a mother, but then she's a homosexual, and then it's not a husband, it's a woman, and they're shocked, and so we're not laughing at that. This show is very pro-LGBTQ, whatever the acronym is in your country. We don't memorize all the acronyms, but we do our best. Laughing at that. And then the next one, he tries to eat meat on the flight, and the stewardess says, "You can't eat meat. It's insulting the vegetarian behind you." And then he goes to wait in line for the washroom, but he has, he's telling an African-American who's also in line that he's behind and he can't jump the line. And then another white person tells him, no, you have to let him ahead of you because of history. So really funny. But let's not forget, right? There's a reason why people are emigrating from Russia. It's not a great place. So I'm glad they made these jokes and pointed it out. I can still see why people would want to leave despite some of the craziness, right? But nevertheless, very, very funny. Speaking of funny propaganda, so the Boston Globe, now it's like 2 weeks after the governor of Florida sent an airplane packed with illegal immigrants to Martha's Vineyard in the United States. So he sent them from Florida to an island off the coast of Boston and Cape Cod, very wealthy island, very white island. And he sent, and you basically can't get there if you're an illegal immigrant, but they declared themselves a sanctuary city. They declared themselves a sanctuary city. So theoretically, immigrants can go there. So the governor of Florida sent them there. We all know the story now. But the Boston Globe now coming out with this. They wrote an entire weekend feature titled, "It Takes a Village." When migrants were sent to Martha's Vineyard, a spirited team of immigration lawyers jumped to help. So, yeah, the immigration lawyers jumped to help evict them, get them out of there, right? Find other places, get them off the island. For God's sakes, get them off the island. But how is this different? How is this different than the Russian article telling people not to emigrate and all this stuff? So here's an article saying, stay in Russia, it's much better. Versus an article that's trying to say, come here, it's so great, but actually get out of here. You can't stay there. It's kind of the same thing. It's kind of the same thing, as far as I can tell. So propaganda, moving and going, coming and staying, looks like it's the same on both sides of the conflict. Now, moving on to this, I think the biggest story of the day by far that everyone's been talking about in the Bitcoin world, and a really important one, and the title of today's show, all about the PayPal Mafia, the PayPal Mafia. So when I saw the stories about PayPal, so PayPal yesterday was embroiled in a huge controversy. PayPal came out and said that if you say something that they don't like, they can take $2,500 out of your account. And it was completely arbitrary. It is up to their discretion, it seemed like, in the terms of service. If they say something that PayPal doesn't like, then they can go ahead and dock you $2,500. So first of all, David Sachs, I have a personal story to tell about David Sachs. David O. Sachs was a member of the PayPal Mafia itself, the PayPal Mafia being the founders of PayPal, Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, and a few others that all went on to big VC investment careers after. And these folks were known by Wall Street media. They'd been nicknamed the PayPal Mafia. And David O. Sachs liked a tweet yesterday where someone said PayPal Mafia was supposed to be an endearing reference to the company's alumni, not a business plan, which I thought was really... So my personal story about David Sachs is when I was running content for CoinDesk for their events, Tensis, you get pitched by all these folks for keynotes, and often they're media handlers and all that kind of stuff. And this was years ago. This would have been 2017. And at the time, David Sachs was very vanilla, according to me. He wasn't really saying things that were that interesting, controversial. I could see he wasn't getting a ton of attention for what he was saying. And it was all pretty run-of-the-mill stuff. And, his handler kept asking, when can we get him a keynote? And I said, well, I don't know if it's going to, how about a panel? How about a few people? No. He only wants a fireside. He only wants a keynote. He's a PayPal Mafia guy. He's at that level. In the end, I said, well, I think we're going to have to pass. I don't know if I have a place for him. He doesn't bring up the dramatic effect that I'm looking to create where I have a spot for a keynote. And usually I'm pretty right about this stuff. I was one of the first people to notice that, for example, Arthur Hayes was going to be a great interview for the industry, especially on Wall Street, before anyone even knew his name. A few others along the road that I met that way. I'll be interviewing Arthur Hayes in a week and a bit in New York City, by the way. I think, I do that same job at Bitcoin Magazine, sort of scout out people who I think are going to make an impact and could add to the narrative, add to the conversation on the day of, and bring attention. And I just didn't think he could do it, but it's rare that I get it this wrong. That's why I'm bringing up David Sachs. When he began really speaking his mind, particularly the 2020 election, when he got his podcast going with those other investors, and you could see that he had a real differentiation. He saw the world differently from them, wasn't afraid to say it. My respect for him went through the roof, and never have I gotten a speaker so wrong as David Sachs. And I think, I'm going to see if he'll come to Bitcoin 2023 in Miami. I think he would be a good addition, personally. Not necessarily a Bitcoin specialist by any means, but maybe we can turn him. I'm not going to put him in any spot where he's there talking about other coins or anything like that. It's a political spot that I would like him for, because I think he really does see the intersection of business, banking, and government these days. Really important viewpoint, and an important person to get on the team, I think. But here's what he ended up saying. So he got into a big fight with Noah Smith. Noah Smith is I think he writes for Bloomberg. I might be wrong. It might be WAPO. It might be another one of these big publications. Of course, Ukraine in his bio. Of course, he's got Ukraine flag in his bio. Where's his genders? I don't think they're in his bio, but he's got the flag and the blue check. And David Sachs says, blue checks think we should fight World War III for cultural trends. And he's quoting Noah Smith here. Says, folks like David Sachs should understand that the free world isn't fighting for wokeness. Wokeness is just one recurring cultural trend that pops up in our society from time to time. We're fighting for the right of people to choose whatever cultural trends they want. Okay, fair enough. So Noah Smith saying wokeness, just a thing that comes and goes, which I think is mostly correct, right? I'm not super afraid of wokeness. I've been more afraid of wokeness than I am now. Pre-Trump, Obama era, I was much more afraid of wokeness because self-censorship was almost universal at the time. And I always believed, my explanation of Trump from the start was, and I've heard a better explanation, so I'll share it, but my explanation when I first saw Trump, and I was someone coming out of politics, and not only coming out of politics, working for one of the most disciplined politicians going, the Prime Minister of Canada at the time, Stephen Harper, who is the exact opposite of Trump, all about manners, really old-timey kind of conservative person, and really trying to actually appease the media, try to convince them that he wasn't as bad as they accused him of being all the time. And I thought it was a dead-end street because they would hate him for anything. So I never thought his approach was going to work. It worked in the early days. I said, it's got a shelf life, it's got a cap. And that's why when I saw Trump in his first ever speech, I said, this is exactly what is going to win. This is the first ever person who's not afraid of what the media says. And my explanation of him from the start was that you're confusing him. He's not a TV star. He's not a real estate person, not a politician. He's an artist. And in our decadence, we've forgotten that art is not aesthetic. It's not just about beauty. It's about really confrontation, making people feel uncomfortable. It's part of art. We look at Kanye. Kanye is like a walking piece of art. Everything he does is sort of controversial and grabs attention. And Trump is much the same way. Trump, none of those things. He's an artist. And artists can't really self-censor. They're incapable. It will kill them. It will kill them. Kanye in the article talked about how it was killing him to not be able to say what he had on his mind despite being so wealthy. And in a world where Obama had really set the tone, and look, Obama's ability to speak so clearly and demonstrate clarity of mind was connected to, I guess, his superpower of self-censorship, right? He's able to say exactly what fits in the moment, but that also means he's able to exclude the things that he knows won't quite fit. And the trend was of all of these people, blue checks, heavily credentialed, were very regularly self-censor type people. And when I saw Trump, he literally was the first person incapable of self-censoring. There wasn't even a question of whether he's self-censoring. He couldn't help it. I used to say, if there was a competition for everyone in the world is saying, no, you, no, you, no, you, no, it's you, no, it's you, no, it's you, or no, you shut up, no, you shut up, no, you shut up, like a child's game, I bet at the time he would win. Trump would be one of the global finalists of no, you shut up, no, you. It could go on for like 20 years, but he would be there, right? He would be in a hypothetical world where that game was actually able to go to its full extension. It would be like Trump against some 2-year-old, and they would just be going and saying these words again and again. The better explanation now, I'll share with you. So I said he's an artist, artists confront and all that stuff. I heard the better explanation, which was Scott Adams. And Scott Adams said, and that's sort of how I was explaining it back in 2015. That's how I was explaining Trump. Scott Adams, I heard in 2016 say something that was even better. I said he was an artist. Scott Adams said he's an artist. He agreed with me on that, but then he actually showed what kind of artist. It's a persuasion artist. Right? He's into persuasion. That's what he does. He persuades. And Kanye is very similar. It's a very similar type of artistic ability. If you're going to write the art of the deal is persuasion, getting someone to agree to the thing that you've put on paper. So I think that's a good way to see what he is. So wokeness here, according to Noah Smith, is just a recurring cultural trend, but it is not something to really worry about. I'm more or less there, but the important part is the framing, right? Not the issue between tyrants and wokeness, not about choosing what you're doing. It's this concept that he has, that Noah Smith says, that you're fighting to understand, you're fighting for the free world, right? Not fighting for wokeness, you're fighting for the free world. And this is David Sacks's reply to that. Well, I'll give you one more from Noah Smith. Noah says, if we must, we should fight World War III to prevent the conquest of the world by brutal tyrants. Culture is only one piece of freedom. Freedom is what is worth fighting for. So I think Noah Smith is more or less right? Freedom is worth fighting for. And if there are brutal tyrants on your doorstep, you got to stop it. And culture is only one piece of freedom. I think everything Noah Smith there said is accurate. But David Sacks's response here just blows it out of the water. And I think David is not just more correct, he completely destroys Noah Smith's point of view. The world faces zero chance of conquest. Russia's army barely functions beyond its immediate supply lines. The US is the most powerful nation in human history. Our only risk is being so wrapped up in our own sense of moral condemnation that we back Putin into a nuclear corner. And I think that's it. I mean, do we really have to worry about the Russian army anymore coming here? Nuclear bombs you have to still worry about, but it's like we've been saying on this show, you need an exit ramp. You got to give a person a way to get out and save face. It doesn't mean he's not going to face repercussions, Putin, just not today. Like, not today. Let's cool it down. Get to the repercussions later, but not today. And in any event, I'm sure they know this. I'm sure national security apparatus knows this, and other people in the United States know that. Putin doesn't look very healthy, right? He doesn't look healthy. I think you're going to find out he's on drugs, and not like what Hitler was on with the crystal meth and all that stuff. It could just be normal pharmaceutical drugs, but some of these steroids people take now to strengthen themselves, the anti-aging stuff, makes people way more aggressive than they've ever been. If you remember when Trump had COVID for a little bit, and then he came out of the hospital and was talking about how he could do anything and he didn't care, and it felt like $1 million, and it was sort of the first, a lot of people had sympathy for Trump on the campaign trail when he had COVID, if you remember. But the minute he got COVID and then started acting foolish, he started acting foolish when he was supposed to be in quarantine, going out, meeting people, this and that, a huge amount of criticism came, and I agreed with it at the time, mostly because he spent the goodwill that he had generated from being sick. But what I saw right away was someone on drugs. I saw someone who was taking the medicine that was helping him get better, but was making him way more risk tolerant than he even would have been in the first place. And that actually scared me, right? People on drugs with nuclear bombs, American or Russian, be careful, right? Like, get them out of there. Now, I'm not that worried. I think Russia does have some checks and balances on the nuclear arsenal. And it looks like, from what we understand, the nuclear arsenal is not so up to date. So shouldn't be too much of trouble. But all of this to say, let me get my notes. All of this to say that the apocalypse that Noah Smith and President Biden are referring to here doesn't seem too likely. But people are talking about it. But when you start looking at the relationship now between everything that's going on with energy and what's going on with the dollar, you start to see a chance for this. Apocalypse is the wrong word, but the nihilism. So this is from Michael Schellenberger again. They say they care about nature, but by blocking natural gas production and shutting down nuclear plants, climate activists are forcing Europeans to burn coal, wood, and even garbage to stay warm. Let's call it what it is. The fanaticism of the apocalypse. The fanaticism of the apocalypse. And that's like one of those instances where you can actually make it so much worse by projecting this anxiety and worry. So he calls it the fanaticism of apocalypse. And if you want to see how it can actually start combining the oil trouble and the dollar trouble, especially with what's going on with OPEC, Michael Cow underlines it. And this goes back to David Sachs's first point, right? That our own risk is being so wrapped in our sense of moral condemnation about environment, about Putin. This is what he says. With the OPEC Plus move, that's asynchronous tag team becomes a synchronous wallop. He's talking about the dollar. OPEC Plus put, so dropping production, puts it directly at odds with the Fed. And his prediction is, I can see a tit-for-tat battle emerging between the Fed trying to engineer demand destruction and OPEC Plus compensating with supply withdrawal. So what he's basically saying is, you've got OPEC, you've got OPEC basically trying to get supply withdrawal out so that the price stays strong. Supply withdrawal. And then you've got the Federal Reserve, who everyone is saying are trying to weaken demand in the economy so inflation stays down. So all of a sudden, you have the potential to, again, keep gas prices high because of this supply shock. And you've got demand destruction coming down. So supply and demand coming down is a very bad situation to be in. I mean, really bad situation to be in. And the results are much like what David Sachs said. You're risking a type of apocalypse. Much like what Michael Schellenberger said. That's the risk, right? It's the Fed and OPEC being in crosshairs here that is the trouble, that has all of this anxiety and stress around it. Now, what we can do as Bitcoiners, and this is why the show is called The Breakup, right? This is why we call it The Breakup. That whole fight is their problem. In order to get out of this, our best bet is to start buying energy sources. If we have our own energy sources as Bitcoiners, if we have our own nuclear reactor, if we have, just more integration into US energy systems, US energy matrix, our likelihood of not being susceptible to either Fed troubles or OPEC and gas troubles is, greatly reduced, which is what we need to be. That's the place Bitcoiners need to get to. And that's why we bring up these conversations about energy so much and what's going on in Russia, because the relationship to Bitcoin is clear. It's opened a path. It's put US energy companies at the top of global geopolitics. And if that's who's in charge, then those are the people we need to get on our side and to start, controlling. So let's get our own nuclear reactors. That's the answer. All right, let's see what's going on in the chat. Shorter episodes on the weekend, just because I don't have the good morning. Great, special comments on display. Good morning, everyone. No, just some basic comments. Yeah, pretty chill episode for a Sunday. Let me know if anyone's got any comments. Otherwise, we're going to call it a show. We're going to call it a show. All right, team. See you tomorrow. Canadian Thanksgiving tomorrow. So to all the Canadians listening, happy Thanksgiving. Ciao, team.